We're on a time limit here. Mainly to get all the questions in to these good folks who decided to run for public office. The game rules are the same. The tape is rolling. Anything that's said is going to get picked up on the tape. The tape will be put on the Civic League website, and I hope that you all link your websites to that one so we can go back and forth and get more viewers for both. The first question, and I will state for everybody here, we're going to ask everybody at the table, and we're going to start at different times. I take it back. The first question is for County Council President. Can you describe?
Excuse us. Can you please quiet your conversations, please? Thank you.
Hold on, Chuck. Everybody, close the door. Let's have quiet. Hold on.
You introduce.
Wait a minute. Is there either interact, folks?
I'm trying to get you.
Hey.
Okay.
Hold on just a second, Chuck. You see this? It's a minute. All right, so everybody knows. That means stop.
Really?
And what we want to do is try to keep most of the responses to 2 minutes. And what I'm going to ask the first 2 candidates for County Council President to do is introduce themselves, describe why they want to run for the office and what their understanding is of the function of Newcastle County President. Mr. Bullock.
Good evening, Chuck, and to the Civic League. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm honored to be here. I am a 30-year community servant. I have served in various capacities, mainly as a pastor, a community leader. I've worked on prison reform, education, economic development. I've served twice as a Delaware State Commissioner on ethics and minority health. I am married for 25 years, 2 sons, and we are progressing well as a church on Newcastle Avenue, the Canaan Baptist Church, and I live in the city. I'm running for this office because I believe that I'm the man for this hour to take this office from good to great. The function of the President of the Council is mainly to be the parliamentarian, negotiator, and to bring cohesion and a sense of oneness to the Council. I would be one, if elected, of 13 voices on the Council, that we may come together and take care of the people's business in a transparent and ethical way. Also, lastly, please go to my website, chrisbullock2012.com. You'll learn more about my positions, chrisbullock2012.com. If you didn't hear me, chrisbullock2012.com.
Thank you, Ms. Taschner.
Thank you to everyone for allowing this forum to take place this evening. My name is Renee Taschner. I'm the Newcastle County Democratic Party endorsed candidate for Newcastle County Council President. I'm a 21-year law enforcement, with 21 years law enforcement experience. I retired in 2004. I've spent time knocking on doors throughout Newcastle County over the past couple of months, and ironically, the question hasn't been about the county president's race. It almost doesn't exist. It's been about the county executive's race and who I'm supporting and who I'm endorsing. My campaign has not aligned itself with any other campaign. I'm an independent individual. My husband would tell you I'm an independent thinker, fiercely independent. And I plan on doing what's best and right with whichever gentleman wins the race for executive. What's best and right for all the citizens of Newcastle County, as long as that is their focus. I can work with any one of the gentlemen who gets elected. The job of the president is to be a consensus builder. It's to work with the district council people. It's to take a big picture of the county as a whole and to see how we can do things to make it work for the county individually. I thank you for your time this evening. I look forward to our conversation. I ask for your support in September at the primary. And if you'd like to check out my website, it's reneetaschner.com. Thank you. And there is 2 E's at the end of Renee.
You want to take this now?
Jonathan?
Okay. Yes. We're going to depart with one exception. Dr. Singer.
I have 3 questions that can take a yes or no answer and a little intro. According to the oath of office required by the Delaware Constitution, elective and appointive office holders swear always to uphold the constitutions of the U.S. and the state. 9 Del Code Section 2662 in the Quality of Life Act requires that the county and DelDOT share responsibility for dealing with traffic impact whenever a rezoning is being sought by requiring that traffic analyses be performed that, quote, consider the effects of existing traffic, projected traffic growth in areas surrounding a proposed zoning reclassification, and the projected traffic generated by the proposed site development for which the zoning reclassification is sought, close quote. Question 1, do you regard that oath as requiring you to uphold laws duly enacted at both state and local levels under authority granted by the state constitution? Question 2, do you regard the recent changes to the redevelopment provisions of the UDC that allowed the county to rezone without a traffic impact study? Newcastle County Code 40.08.130.B6A, A through H, to constitute refusal to share the burden imposed by 9 Del Code 2662, and therefore violations of the oaths by the relevant legislators and executive. Question 3, do you regard those council members and the county executive who approved a rezoning in violation of 9 Del Code 2662 as having violated their oaths of office?
How do you want them to go, Beck?
Left to right's fine.
All right, let's clarify so they're clear. This includes their intro, or this is just the starting of the questions?
This is the answer to his question.
All right.
Once
3 questions.
Once he's done with this question, then I'm gonna resume.
In a sense of fairness, we were given some of these questions in advance. What question numbers were yours?
I don't know if you were given these. I will give you copies of this that
Okay,
have
so
my
these weren't-
email address.
These weren't part of the 30 that we
No,
got
no.
originally? Okay. Well,
No,
first,
I give you an update. I've been bombarded all week. I was getting these questions up at 4 o'clock today.
okay.
So he's gonna give you them in writing. And
With my email address.
Okay, so does he want the answers tonight, now, or does he want it in the email?
Just a yes or no.
Yes or no? Yeah, I know. Everybody, let's keep it calm, please.
All right,
All right, Chuck, it's gonna be the same 2 minutes?
well, I wanna let him finish. Rick, are you done? How do you want to respond?
Left to right,
Okay, you want responses now or later?
both.
Now or not at all? What are we
Chuck,
gonna do?
Chuck, if I may make a suggestion, could we please let the county executives introduce themselves like we did with the presidents? That will give them a chance to digest the questions they were just given, and then we will continue.
And while each one are making their introduction, the other was.
They can read it, yes,
Yes.
please.
I think that's only fair, Chuck.
Mr. Clark.
Paul Clark, lifelong resident of Newcastle County. Spent over 30 years as a civic member like yourself. I can remember when Vic Singer really was an acting rocket scientist. And we used to meet in Artesian with these meetings. Over the years, I've been active. I've served on boards and commissions. In 2004, I was elected council president and oversaw the expansion of council. I was re-elected in 2008, and when Chris Coons became senator in 2010, by state code, I took over the job as county exec. At that point, maybe a little bit before that, we realized that the economy was not coming back anywhere near as well as everyone hoped. And that some of the things that were done in the past were adding to our problems. We quickly came in, and during the 3 budgets I've touched, we've saved over $21 million of projected costs. We recently redid our bond rating, which confirmed Newcastle County is on the right direction, and that bond rating will save us close to $4 million. I thank everyone for coming out tonight. I do think it's somewhat of a shame, though, that we couldn't have spent more time. I think these jobs are very important, and there should have probably been a night of its own. So we can talk about it.
Please hold your applause.
Mr. Gordon?
Good evening, and I'd like to thank the Civic League for putting this on and for all the patient citizens that are going to endure these late hours. But I was elected, not elected, I was chief of police after 15 years on the police department, from 1989 to 2005. I went off and then became elected county executive in 97 to 2004. During that time, I had an unprecedented record of creating parks, libraries, centralizing the government, and created what we're going to be talking about tonight, the Unified Development Code. I did this all without raising taxes. You're going to be hearing that maybe I didn't leave enough surplus for the next 20 years. The fact is that we did a great job. We left a surplus. We built a lot of things that were unfunded mandates from the executive before me to build libraries. We had one thing that's missing. We had all the civics included in everything that I did as county executive, from the Civic League down to the umbrella groups. When we created the Unified Development Code, it was done with the participation of developers, business people, and most importantly, the citizens. That doesn't exist anymore. We had a police department that I think was #1 in the country. We had parks, sleep under the stars, all kinds of wonderful things, didn't cost a lot of money. We celebrated the county employees. We celebrated the county government. I'm worried now that we have a shortfall in 3 years of close to $80 million. The debt, bond debt has been doubled, and it's time to put the brakes on, try to figure out how we're going to establish and correct this problem. I just might mention that when I went into office, we corrected the problem by doing a tremendous reorganization, but I also went out to the General Assembly and I gained a lot of money. I didn't lose any money. I brought the 0.5% back that we were able to enjoy during the last 2/3 of my administration. Thank you all.
Good evening. I'm Bill Shahan. I already work for you. I've worked for Newcastle County for 25 years. Before that, I worked for the City Police in Wilmington as a police cadet and a communications specialist. Communications, I believe, is a key thing that's missing in Newcastle County right now. If you read the News Journal today, they did a pretty good job of stating where I stood on the issues. We have a public safety issue. We're short police officers. We need more paramedics. We have ethics issues in Newcastle County. We have land use issues. We have budget issues. You're going to hear the current administration talk to you about how the budget is balanced. We didn't touch the general fund. They glazed right over how they borrowed from other funds and all the jobs that go unfilled. That isn't good government. The reason I decided to run after 32 years of being, I'm okay being called a public servant. That's what I was when I was first hired. People use different names for that now. I'm a public servant, have been for over 3 decades. And in over 3 decades, this is as bad as I've ever seen it. It's as bad as I've ever seen it. This county is headed for catastrophic fiscal failure. I said it before, it is not a scare tactic. It's not something to get you all riled up and vote if you wouldn't normally vote. It's facts. Numbers don't lie. People can bend the truth, but numbers don't lie. And Mr. Singer, if I could answer your questions right now, yes to all 3. So we got that out of the way. Thank you.
My name's John Husband. I have 33 years experience in the private sector and public sector, 28 years with Newcastle County as a public servant. Many of you, especially right here on the Civic League, have seen me many times. I've come to present projects to you, and a lot of the projects you heard that were done tonight by the previous county executives were projects that I had done. My environmental credentials are without reproach. You know that. You've seen what I've been able to accomplish with parks, with open space, preservation, conservation, and my activities in the civic community. I will bring honesty, integrity, and trust to this office, to the county. I am known for my trustworthiness and my honesty and my working with the community through partnerships to bring in all aspects of the community, from the business leaders to the conservationists to the developers to the special interest groups and just to the citizens who want to have a good quality of life in this county. That's what I will bring. One of the biggest issues that the Civic League has faced, which I feel is the top issue that this county needs to address, is to bring planning back to land use. I was not a fan of the UDC when it was developed. I thought it was convoluted and confusing, and it was used against good civic-minded groups who thought that certain development or certain practices were incorrect. I've seen communities actually be degraded because they would bring up instances that needed to be addressed, but through certain areas through the UDC, they were used to say, this is why you're wrong and we're not going to listen to you. I will bring communication and transparency to this government.
Stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Taschner, can you, at this time, give any response to Mr. Singer's question?
You just want yes or no? Okay, number one is yes. Number two, without being afforded the opportunity to explain further, would be no. And number three would be no, without the opportunity to be afforded to explain further.
Mr. Bullock?
Yes to all three.
Mr. Clark?
You know, Vic, you've always were a good man and probably a very good rocket scientist, but you're not a lawyer. Many of these things have been argued, and I think you've been proven incorrect. We have a great relationship with DelDOT. May not be everybody's favorite, but they handle traffic, and we use them as a consultant. So yes, we are looking at traffic. Did council members violate it? I do not believe so. Now, having said that, you go down farther, and would you agree with some of the things you said? Yeah. Matter of fact, my administration's already working with what the citizens asked for, is traffic districts, looking at traffic holistically and how best to do that. But there is not a project built that DelDOT doesn't look at traffic. Now, is everyone a traffic TIS? No, it's DelDOT's decision. And to always remember in redevelopment, that property owner has a certain inherent right of the traffic that was there to begin with. I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Gordon?
Number one, I certainly think that we're guided by the Constitution of the state. Number two, redevelopment has been used to destroy any kind of code that was left. A series of it took place in 2006 up to currently, so that you can actually redevelop a farmer's field, which we know happened. I think it's an abomination when you, the Stoltz project where you take 36 acres and you rezone it to commercial without any consideration what that will do for Wilmington and the whole area, and you waive the traffic. I think you can't be sure of what council was told that night. I think that you have to look at the legal advice and what they were told as to the requirement. You had the planning board say no, but you had the planning department that works for this executive say yes. I don't think it gets worse than that. But getting back to what council knew, I'm told, and I think there's a lawsuit on it, that they didn't have all the information.
Can you answer Mr. Singer's questions as far as yes or no?
You did.
It did.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shahan?
My last 25 years have been in land use, 10 years out in the field inspecting everything you can imagine being built that needs a permit. The last 12 in the land use department working on permits and zoning issues. I have watched this code systematically be picked apart. That's why I stand on my answer, yes, yes, and yes.
Mr. Husband.
You know how I feel about traffic impact studies. I think they need to be done in all instances of rezonings. To number one, yes. I would like to say yes to number two, but I know that it was a well-discussed and argued ordinance that was put through, so I would have to say no to that, Vic. Three, because it was changed by county ordinance, which is law, I'd have to say no to that also. But I would qualify it as saying that what took place violated number one as far as what the quality is supposed to be, the Quality of Life Act. But I think it was done legally.
The next question pertains to, as was mentioned by one of the candidates, county budgets, county finance. We're going to start with Ms. Taschner first. What is your view of county finances over the past 10 years, and your comment on the number of balanced budgets starting from 2002 forward, where the yearly budget matched the yearly income without touching reserves?
Can you repeat the question again?
What is your view of county finances over the past 10 years? And can you tell the audience how many yearly budgets from 2002 forward were balanced in that no reserve was used and that the yearly income matched the yearly expenses?
Well, viewing the finances over the last 10 years, due to the fact that we went from a $45 to $46 million a year transfer tax to about $15 or $16 million a year, I would have to say the county finances don't look, or didn't look for a long while, too promising. That being said, you know, we have obtained AAA bond rating, starting back, I believe it was when Tom Gordon was county executive, and that has continued on. So it's important that we maintain the AAA bond rating as we go forward. Insofar as how many years that the county balanced the budget without going to the reserves, to be honest with you, no, I can't answer that.
Thank you. Mr. Husband.
I believe by law, we have to do a budget that is balanced. So every budget that is produced for the last 10 years, since we were a county, has been balanced. The reserves include balancing the budget. It's money that the county has. I know during the first part of this 10-year era, there was money pretty much falling from the sky. And whether the reserves were needed for that, I'm not sure. I know a lot of money went out to different organizations and to the city of Wilmington. Perhaps that came from the reserves. But I think every year reserves were used in one way or another to balance the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Shahan.
I believe John's correct with that. Every year that the budget is balanced with a little bit from reserves. I think when you look back at what we call the housing boom, good times, that's when the reserves were built beyond belief. Whatever happens in the national economy is going to affect the state economy, is going to affect the county economy. What I know about the county budget now, I'm going to have to get a third party to look at it before I believe it. Because I know what has been presented, what is on the books now, I don't trust, I don't believe. So I'm going to pass on, have an opinion on what's going on now.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon.
All right, let me expand on your question, because I had budgets from 1997 to 2004. We had such balanced budgets the entire time. You're going to hear my opponents say in 2004 and 2003 it was unbalanced, but let me try to give it a little bit of a lesson in finances. We had such a large surplus. that I was actually sued for having an overaccumulation of surplus. So we took 50 million out of that in year 203, 204, which would show on the books that we were spending more than our income. But it was not built into the base, so that in 206, it jumped right back to a large surplus. So what do you do when you have a lot of money? You try to find, in that case, it was the city of Wilmington. The city of Wilmington was in a lot of very difficult positions. We were able to help out the fire department, the police department, the riverfront. We were building a library, and some nonprofits in the city. But to say that your expenses over income, the expenses were the grant, but they disappeared because it wasn't a continuation. So that when I left office, by 206, the budget's balanced, probably balanced 207. Around 208, they ran into trouble, started drawing down from the surplus.
Mr. Clark.
Let me clarify, I never said Mr. Gordon didn't balance the budget, and there's nothing wrong with using reserves to balance a budget. That's what you got it for. Sometimes you use your savings account. I will answer your question, I'm the first one to do it, where I didn't use any reserves. You'll have people say, well, he took a little money out of there or there. That's not accurate. That money was meant for those uses. In the sewer fund, we actually used the leftover money or settlement that we won with National Vulcanite Fiber, NBF. You know, a lot of people are going to say a lot about the budget, and I don't know, maybe they're financial experts, but I want you to listen to what Finch Rating, Moody's Investment Service, and Standard & Poor's Rating said. Newcastle County has a strong financial operation, conservative policies, and low debt burden. The county's financial position will remain strong as officials continue to proactively manage through the current economic environment. I think we're doing it right. We have reserves, and we're going to try it for as long as possible not to use those, because the fear is the economy's not going to come back as quickly as we all would like, maybe not quick at all. And we need those reserves to make sure that the citizens don't have a tax increase at a time that they're all hurting.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock.
The county needs to continue to prioritize its spending, and that will lead to a balanced budget, and hopefully we can embrace and remember the times when we had a surplus. Secondly, we need to continue to live within our means. We shouldn't spend what we don't have, but on the other hand, we should always target our resources where the needs are the greatest. There are over 500,000 people in this county, and we only have a certain amount of money to deal with the needs of our constituents. I would also add that as a pastor and community servant, I've managed 3 multi-million-dollar budgets, and I know what it means for groups and governments and entities to live within their means. I would simply say that Paul and Tom dealt a hand, and they did the best they could with what they had. Going forward, the president of the council and the county exec need to work together and not have competing economic or budgetary visions for the county.
Thank you. We'll start with Mr. Bullock. Can you describe any known effects of the auxiliary dwelling unit legislation?
Can you say that a little louder,
And
please?
then you describe any known effects of the auxiliary dwelling legislation passed by Newcastle County.
Chuck?
Yes, sir.
I think most people call it known by accessory dwelling units.
Yes, sir. What did I say?
Auxiliary.
So, same thing, but I think it's known by the
Not at this time.
Mr. Clark.
No, I really have not. There's been very few of them. I'll be honest, I was one of the people who opposed the past administration on that and thought we should look at it a little closer because of comments from civic groups about rentals. Part of the plan was that, you know, if grandma wanted to stay in her house or grandfather wanted to stay in her house and rent a piece out, could they be allowed to do that? Many people were faking it anyway. You know, put a fake door up and take it down and all that. But there's been very few started, and it seems to have worked. So it really has not had an effect that I know of.
Mr. Gordon.
I think that there hasn't been a large number, but it's certainly something that I think needs to be looked at and evaluated as to was it needed and how it's working.
Mr. Shahan.
Accessory dwelling unit is when you want to finish your basement off so your kids have their own separate living quarters, when you want to take the garage and turn it into a place where you can have a separate entrance for your commonly referred to as an in-law suite. There's only been a couple hundred that we know of. We keep track of them. And the majority of those couple hundred have not been rental units. So as to what effect they're having, tracking, what good that is gonna, what results that's gonna produce, I don't know the relevance to it. But I can tell you that the majority of them are not rental units. These are people with parents who get to the point in their life where they want to live with their son or daughter, and those additions are put on. I think what we're trying to avoid, the spirit of the law, we're trying to avoid people taking that detached garage out back, throwing a hot plate and refrigerator in it and starting to rent it out and call it legal. I think we've prevented that from happening. So as far as tracking it, what is it? Is it good or is it bad for a community? We're actually going to have to give it more time. We're going to have to give it more time. We have the statistics, and the number is very, very low.
Thank you. Mr. Husband.
The auxiliary dwelling units, I always thought was when it was triggered by the stove. You could put your water anywhere in any part of your house. It's the stove that triggered it. I was very skeptical of that plan when it was first introduced, especially up in the Brandywine 100. There was a lot of areas that could have been used, but I've noticed through observations over the years that it's actually worked very well. I've not heard one complaint, and I know of many that were in the Brandywine 100 that were illegal long before it became legal. Still, no problems, and I know of no reason why it would want to be discontinued. There's very few. Leave things be.
Thank you. Ms. Taschner.
Yes, as you've heard previously, the purpose of these units is to basically move mother-in-laws, father-in-laws into your home. As they get older, it's to bring families closer together. One of the concerns, though, that has been raised, especially by the real estate market and the people that work within that market, is what happens when mom and dad die? What happens to that unit? Does that unit then become a rental unit, and now you have a problem in your community? And I don't know that the county tracks that. And from what I'm hearing from the two gentlemen that work in land use, it doesn't sound like it's a problem yet. But that's something that we have to be mindful of is, what happens to these units once the people that they're intended to be used for pass away. And that could be a concern within our communities, and I think that's something that probably should be addressed.
And you just wonderfully set up the next question, and we'll start with you. Should the term community character be brought back into the lexicon used by Newcastle County?
I think community character should be taken into account in many different steps of what we do within the county. I mean, we all want Newcastle County to remain a beautiful place to live, work, and raise our children. I know people would probably argue differently, but I don't think that there are people that intentionally go out and try and make our community ugly and uninhabitable. So I think community character needs to come into play in a couple of different areas. When we look at the UDC and the different codes that dictate what we can do in our communities, I think it's only fair that we bring in community character. Why would you want to put a warehouse, I don't know, bringing in 50 or 100 trucks a day doing commercial delivery of toilet paper, if you want, into an area right down the road from where your brand new neighborhood is? And if it wasn't marketed that way when you bought the neighborhood, I think that you kind of have to be fair to both sides, and by just springing it on people doesn't make it fair.
Thank you. Mr. Husband.
Community character. There's the visual part. That's whatever anybody's taste is. But I think that the community character, what you're asking about, Chuck, is how does a development project fit into the community? And probably you're referring to the Stoltz project. Was that a good fit for that community? What is that huge shopping area? What that transition to rural area, to the community character that was intended? And I think community character should definitely play an important role. But besides being in the UDC and playing a role, it needs to be interpreted properly. Because community character was brought up during that Stoltz project, and it was said, yes, this fits in with the character of that area. I don't know how many people here agree with that. I disagree with that.
Mr. Shahan.
You look at what we have in the Unified Development Code now, we have the hometown overlay out in Hocassin, we have it up in Claymont. That's one sort of community character. You look at the anti-monotony rule that we have in the Unified Development Code, so you just can't go down and pump out cookie cutter townhouses. That's a form of community character. What John referred to, the Stoltz project, community character, if you want to adopt something with more teeth in the code, you need community involvement. I would be very much in favor of that. It needs to be spelled out, it needs to be expanded. This code is filled with gray area, loopholes. That's what people make a profession out of, punching a hole in, and they make a lot of money doing it. We need to sew up those loopholes to benefit all of us.
Mr. Gordon.
Community character was all about the Unified Development Code that I worked with you all so hard to get done in '97. And a lot of it has been stripped out and done away with. But I promise you, when I get elected, we'll be back at the table again. We're gonna put the cow back in the barn. We're gonna try to fix it regarding all the redevelopment plans that are in, all the other violations of it, so that we don't endure what I believe to be a terrible future ahead of us, with a terrible, terrible possibility of the quality of life being diminished because of the loopholes to what I thought was a pretty good code.
Mr. Clark.
Well, community character for years has been bounced around. It's very hard to define, almost impossible to defend legally. But I think, there are characteristics that we can put in, and that's one of the things we do with zoning. With correct zoning, you don't have a warehouse next to a residential area. I think we've seen some of the problems of the pre-code when you had those things take place. We all talk about the UDC. It wasn't a great document. It's had hundreds of changes, some good, some bad, multiple county execs, multiple councils, but we can work on it. People need to come up with good, solid suggestions sometimes. But they also have to meet the muster of law. You can't just do things because you like to. We've tried that in Newcastle County. We've ended up in court, and we've always usually lost, which had cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars of lawsuits. So, when we look at this, we need to come up with the best way. And if people want to have some more design standards, we've done that. If you want a hometown overlay in your area, we've done that. But community character is also used a lot of times to keep people out. We don't want those people around us, so let's not make sure that that soybean field doesn't ever get any density of an apartment complex or townhouse development. That's one of the problems that was with this code that no one ever wants to talk about, but it's real. I think we've slowly tried to get rid of some of that, and I've been criticized for changing some things in the code. I stand proud of that, because I think we now have more diverse housing in Newcastle County because of it.
The UDC is open for interpretation, particularly on this issue of community character. I would emphasize that community character ought to be determined by the character of the people who live in the community. It's critical that we have people of character who live in our communities. And when you talk about community character in the UDC, we have to define what that is and have a clear and unambiguous interpretation of what that means. And also, as president, if I'm blessed to have this role, I would have an open door policy with all the civics to come in and let's reason together. Civics and the community need to have a voice in the process. Government does not have all the answers. We need to have an open forum and discussion and dialogue as to what's best for all the citizens in the community. Stoltz was bad. As I said last night in Holcassin, it was a teaching moment. And what have we learned from that? What are the best practices, worst practices? Let's move forward to keep our neighborhoods and our communities strong and beautiful, walkable communities, safe communities. But I emphasize that we need people of character in our communities so we can maintain community character.
Thank you. We're going to start with Mr. Shahan and Mr. Husbands, and then we'll come back to that.
Chuck, just 1 second, please. I need you just 1 second.
Can you tell us, again, Mr. Shahan, on average, the number of existing homes in Newcastle County for sale this week, last month, last year, and the numbers is pretty static. It's a number.
I would have no idea.
Mr. Husband, the number of existing homes for sale on the market, able to be purchased tomorrow.
I would not even venture to guess.
Ms. Taschner. Mr. Bullock.
Do you know the answer?
Yes, sir.
What is the answer? When I'm presiding in my church over catechism or examination, we have one rule. Whoever asks the question needs to be able to answer the question. Too many is my answer. Too many.
No, I do not. I just know that based on what I get from the realtors, that the inventory is getting in better mix with the demand. But at any given time, that varies greatly.
Mr. Gordon,
I'd say between 7 and 10%.
do you have a numerical number? Okay, the number according to Fort Patterson Schwartz was in excess of 5,000. Okay, now, the question to you all, and we'll start with Mr. Bullock, is what is the prospect for an existing homeowner ever to see reappreciation of the equity that's been lost in the last 4 years under the current conditions of approval within the Newcastle County government?
I think now is the time for homeowners to do reassessment in light of the market and the whole housing issue. That is a big question, but I would leave that secondly in the hands of the homeowners and the people who have domain over these particular properties. I think 5,000 properties is too much, and we have to look at in terms of what's in the best interest going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Well, it's a market-driven basis, so it depends how many buyers are interested, and that's why, and I wish if you had asked me, I would have brought it from the realtors. What is the inventory time? You know, to take the approach I know you're saying, it's like saying, well, gee, let's not make any new cars because we got a whole lot of used ones. Well, it's sometimes somebody wants a new car. They want a better car, a different car. It's market-driven. You know, unfortunately, many people invested in homes as investments. And many people, unfortunately, were not dealt a very good hand by the banks. But the bottom line is, if you sit on your house for a while, it will still become a good investment. But if you're thinking of turning it in 5 years, you probably have lost money on it. And it's a shame. But if you bought a house at the high, and it's not at the high again, you have to sit for a while. That doesn't mean somebody else is coming in, and I think that's part of the thing we have to constantly keep looking at is, as long as we have the quality of life we have, the tax rates we have, we're going to have people come in. You know, I never thought that Delaware National would sell Toll Brothers houses at $800 to $1 million, but but people are still buying them. So there is a market. It's gonna fluctuate based on market-driven demands. And, you know, I don't think most builders are gonna build any of those plans. I know you're always scared of all those plans that are out there. But nobody's building tons of houses right now. They're building them based on selling them. Matter of fact, they can't even get money to build them unless they're selling them. So it will get to equilibrium soon.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon.
I think that the top 1% are doing well. But what you're talking about, should we continue to allow developments to be rezoned when we don't have a demand for it? I'm more concerned about the ones that ran in with redevelopment and property rights to lock in, waiting for the market to get started so they can do all the infill, fill in every space. But I think it's a concern that's got to be looked at. As I said, we got to look at the whole process of how they were able to obtain a lot of the rezonings. There's just a feeling, and I'm not trying to cause any issues here, but I think there's a feeling that when the civic associations I go to, that they just don't have the impact anymore they've given them. I think you come in, they say rezoning, the old trick's back. They don't, they come in, a developer will ask for 200, he really only wants 125. We're threatening redevelopment or something else, we'll end up with 180. Much more than they deserve, but there's a feeling that it's not a fair level playing field.
Mr. Shahan.
How to give an accurate answer to that is, you have to consider all the variables. What did you pay? At what rate did you finance? What amount did you put down? Did you have instant equity when you moved in? I can tell you this, that we've all heard this, invest in real estate because they're not making any more of it. That's the truth. I don't think people, even in a market, or an economy-driven market, I don't think you're gonna lose money on your home. I just purchased a home, not a new home, but an old home, 2 years ago. And I know I could refi now, save a few $100, and, you know, increase the equity. But I'm holding on to it. I'm going the slow and steady route. I think if you do that, you're always gonna make out. We were talking about this, one of my daughters was here tonight. We were talking about this. She's getting ready to buy a house. The experts are saying, you know, don't hurry up and do it now. It might not go up. Prices might not go up. Rates may not go up. But this is a market-driven thing. I've talked to many contractors. I'm not so much friendly with major developers where I work. It's mostly the contractors, the people that swing the hammers, that drive the trucks. These people are always saying that 200,000 and below and over 300,000. There's a gap there. It seems like the houses that sell are to people, you know, you've heard the phrase, people that have money always have money. You go over 300,000, those houses will still sell. And first-time home buyers that want to look for something, those houses under 200 will sell. But there's so many variables that I don't think you can get a truly accurate answer on that. It's such an individual thing.
Thank you. Mr. Husband.
Chuck, I believe you asked, when would we recover? When would the value that our home was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, get back to where it was before so that we continue to grow? When I'm elected and take office in January, and we form our partnerships, and we build back our quality of life and bring back economic development to this community, we're gonna get our economic growth and our values in our homes back before my first 4 years are done. Because we are going to do it together. We are going to bring people here, we're gonna bring businesses here, because we are gonna have the quality of life that everyone is looking for.
Thank you. I wish I knew when we would recover. I've heard nationally people say it's gonna be another 10 to 15 years for us to ever get back to where we were back in the 90s, pre and into the 2000s. So 10 to 15 years is the number I've personally heard. I was talking about this with my husband as well. So it's disappointing. So what do you do in the meantime? Well, there has been talk about doing reassessments again. And really, we should have rolling reassessments, because when you do reassessments, what happens is 1/3 of the people stay sort of the same or within $50 or $100. 1/3 of the people see a significant increase, and 1/3 of those people actually see a decrease in the amount of tax that they're paying. The problem is in Delaware, I believe it was 1980 or 86, was the last time, I'm sorry?
71 of 83 is the target date
Okay.
for Newcastle County.
So that was the last time that we had done reassessments on properties in Newcastle County. Well, you can look at your neighbor's house, what they've paid for it, and if you've lived in that neighborhood 50 years, you know what you paid for it. And why are they almost paying the same tax? I mean, the value of the homes have increased. So these are the sorts of things that you have to consider. Hopefully, you know, we said it last night, that the economy will recover. It depends on who you ask. If I knew the answer to that, I'd be in a much better financial position myself, as I'm sure many of you would be. So there's a lot of things that have to happen, but reassessments should at least be on the table. We should not include that in the discussion.
And regarding one of the comments made by one of the candidates about building homes in soybean fields, the state bonded debt in 2002 was $709 million. In 10 years, according to the Deputy Director or Deputy Secretary of Finance, who we met here a couple months ago, it has increased by $1 billion over 10 years. It's now $1.7 billion.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Chuck, would you
Bullock?
speak up and say that again so everybody can hear it?
$1.7 billion. Our bonded debt increased by $1 billion in 10 years. Unfortunately, no members of the news media has ever published that, so probably most of the people in the room, except for people at the meeting, know how far up our debt has raced. The Deputy Secretary also told us that for the last 10 years, the top 5 money items in each of those yearly increases of $100 million a year was building schools. And then, for the people that were here, correct me if I roll off the path, it's because we're building all these houses. In your view, can we continue to run up the debt in that fashion, Mr. Bullock?
No.
Mr. Clark?
Well, I think you've asked a very complex question. You want a very simple answer. You know, there was a time, I believe, Tom, you correct me, if during the UDC where the county actually had some oversight of schools. State took that away. Mr. Cathcart, I remember, was the legislator that did that. The state sets a rate. They charge, I think, close to $8,000 a dwelling unit. Whether that's the right rate, not right, I don't know. That's the state's obligation. But then again, they then bond that building, and the people who use that school over the course of the time pay out of their taxes. Are the school taxes correct to handle that? I think that's a case where everyone needs to look at. But, you know, you need schools. You know, I don't believe we can lock our doors and lock our gates of Newcastle County and the state of Delaware and tell everybody they can't come in. Should the new development pay for itself? To some degree, in a correct fashion. But again, every dollar you put on that new house puts it out of someone's affordability. We've almost got to the point in Newcastle County where you can't build an affordable house with all the impact fees and all the costs. So again, it's what you want. As citizens of Newcastle County, you need to tell us. Do you want nobody to have a new house that someone said they're selling very well at under 200, 250. But, you know, do you want to stop all those houses? That's a decision that really should have a big conversation about. But right now, in many cases, especially in certain areas of this county, taxes for schools were low. Much of that land was farmland, was not generating tax revenue. Schools got behind, and now they're trying to catch up. Education's a long story, and we all should take days and days to talk about it, because it's not doing well, but that's another subject for another day.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Chuck, you were at the table when we created DVC, and I think you insisted on schools being part of it, and it was removed. But I introduced the impact fee. Somebody's gonna pay. You're either gonna pay impact fee or you're gonna pay higher taxes. It's coming out of the same pot. That begs the question of, again, things that we talked about, encouraging. And it's something that I think we've gotta, again, get back together, bring everybody back to the table, and decide where that growth should be going and who's gonna pay for it. It's been really, look, the code wasn't given to us by God. It certainly wasn't perfect, and it can be amended, and I just don't think it had to be destroyed.
Mr. Shahan.
I would concur with former Executive Gordon and with Reverend Bullock. No, it can't continue at that rate.
Mr. Husband.
Impact fees were set up to pay for the services of the housing development because of what that generates and needs of the community. Michael Strine, who was the Chief Financial Officer under County Executive Coons, once told me that for every dollar we took in with new development, it cost us, I believe he said it was $1.37. So we were losing 37 cents for every dollar we were bringing in. I think what we need to do is adjust the impact fees. If we're working outside of our plan, where the growth is taking place, not where we want to direct it, or if it's a totally undeveloped area that we want to direct growth, then it needs to be paid for with impact fees. There's no infrastructure in that area. It needs to be developed. The people that will use that will pay for it.
Thank you. Ms. Taschner.
I don't think that we should continue on this path of spending without some serious oversight and reconsideration of what it is we're spending our money on. That being said, I think part of the problem is there's been and will continue to be a reduction in federal funds going to the states, which the states then are supposed to pass on to the county. So again, we can't continue on this path. We as a county and as your council president, we need to have a clear financial focus, a direct path, a steady hand, each and every time we want to do something that costs money. Because the money is not going to be flowing as well as it has in years past. And we're seeing the results of that through the increase in everything else that we're paying for, whether it be gas, whether it's school taxes. I agree with whoever said it, I don't even remember. We do need schools. I'm on a school board, and I see the importance and what it does to these kids and their psyche when they go into a building that's nice and it's clean and it's a good learning environment and it's safe. Who would want to deny their child, regardless of what school they go to, public or private? Who would deny their child that opportunity to learn in such a great environment? So we as parents have the responsibility to pay for that. But it doesn't mean we have to pay top dollar. It doesn't mean we can't cut some corners and not get everything at the same time. Sometimes you have to wait.
Going back to the conversation with Mr. Strine that Mr. Husband mentioned, are you aware of the origin of his comparison? I'll tell you what it was. It was the cost of community services. They're done on a yearly basis. They're done throughout the United States by the American Farmland Trust. Starting with Mr. Husband again to expound on what you started. If you're taking in $1 of taxes and spending $1.30, how long can you continue to do that? How long can you continue, again, to have $100 million increases in bond debt before radical change has to be made?
That's easy. You stop right now and you fix it. None of us go to the store and they say it's $1 and I say, well, I'll take $1.50. I don't have that money, so I'm not going to buy it. You do it. It's a very simple answer. You stop, you fix it now.
Ms. Taschner.
I absolutely agree. We've got to stop, slow down, and fix it now.
That will lead to economic disaster eventually.
Mr. Clark?
In Newcastle County, we have fixed it. Well, no, there's been not clear information here. The $1.37, which we got down to about $1.25, was because of the reserve. We were using the reserve to pay, so when people paid their taxes, they were getting $1.25 for the longest part. It could have been up to $1.37 for the dollar of taxes because there was a reserve. Tom left it, maybe it was a good use of it. But it got people in a mindset of wanting more and more and more services, and they weren't really paying for it. And this was not just new development, this was every taxpayer in Newcastle County. They were getting a benefit of the RTT, which was the growth. Our whole fiscal structure was based on the RTT. It was a great surge of money. It was a terrible way to finance a government because it went away. It was building a foundation on sand. The best foundation we had at the time, I'm sure. But when it went away, all of a sudden we had all the legacy costs. We had the interest in the people who wanted all those services. We've took the time to try to straighten that out. And when I say I balanced the budget for the last 3 years, the money coming in is the money being paid with a little bit of the RTT, which council decided never, ever to do more than about $15 million. The rest would be going to paying debt or one-time purchases. So even the RTT is being used today. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Dollar in, dollar out.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
Again, I was one who created the surpluses, and a lot of that, all of the surpluses were created during my administration, and a lot of it is for what Paul has said, for rainy days. But I think Paul would agree that the county is a stable government, and it does cost more every time a development. You do not make money. The people that are making money are the people that have the towns. They want to annex. As long as they continue to annex, they're going to do well. The minute that stops, then they have a tax code. And the county government is a very restricted government. It only has transfer tax, property tax, and fees. That's the way it was created by the General Assembly. It's a very difficult government to manage without any kind of, everyone has tried to get, I think Paul has tried to get other taxes. And they generally don't let you to kind of starve within your little town. And we got to get on a crusade that 2/3 of the taxes are raised in this county. And we send 1/3 to Kent and 1/3 to Sussex. It's really a distribution problem. City of Wilmington has it the worst. They occupy 150,000 people from the county a day. They're not allowed to annex, they're boxed in, they've got wage tax, they've got a lot of poverty. So it's a serious problem for everybody. As long as the county government has to rely on this very limited form of taxes, it's gonna be a very tough government to manage. So you gotta do it right. You gotta go back and look at the organization where you can get money out of it every few years and reorganize. When you see the transfer tax slowing down, you can't wait, you gotta slow the government.
I'm gonna shock everybody, I agree with Tom.
Old friend.
I thought I was imagining that, but the more they were talking. Let's talk about the redistribution of some of those impact fees. These are numbers that I work with every day. And I'm gonna throw a couple numbers out there to you so you, and I had to write them down actually just to remember them, there's so many. I'm gonna give an example, a 2,000 square foot house in this county. It's a modest house, not small, not big. A house that's gonna sell for about that 200,000, 250, depending on where it is in the county. Your permit fee to the county is gonna be around $1,500. Okay, that's gonna cover your plan review, your certificate of occupancy, your zoning review, your lines and grades review, and all your inspections, provided you don't fail any, because if you fail them, they're gonna start tacking $50, $75, $100 on. So look at $1,500 coming out of your pocket right away. Your impact fees that aren't due until you're ready to occupy the house are gonna be about $900. Keep that figure in your mind, $900. You're gonna have sewer fees from over Jonathan's department. You're gonna have $101 connection fee. $720 wastewater treatment fee. And then depending on where you are regionally, there's gonna be other fees that are thrown on top of that. Go back to that $900. Where that $900 gets distributed is a major, major thing. It's a major, major thing. It affects everything else that goes on in the county. I can tell you, out of a house, 2,000 square foot, $1,500, $900 in impact fees, about $10 goes to the police. $10. About $14 goes to paramedics. That's where the imbalance is. When that's straightened out, as soon as that's straightened out, it's going to affect the rest of the economy in the county, the rest of the budget in the county. So that's what we need to address. Where that money goes that we're already taking in. You can't take in $900 and give $10 to the police and say, here.
Thank you. It's time to close. Is that 2 minutes? Say anything you want.
I apologize, I caught the flu about 2 days ago and it came full board this evening, so I didn't want to tell you that earlier. I want to thank each and every one of you for being concerned citizens and taking the opportunity to be with us here this evening. As I stated earlier, the role of council president is that to be a consensus builder and a problem solver. I have served the citizens of Newcastle County for over 21 years as a law enforcement officer, a community volunteer, and as a current sitting member of the Newcastle County VOTEC School Board, doing just that, problem solving. I've had to work with people from all socioeconomic backgrounds, and I've had to help them, guide them, and yes, even sometimes arrest them while doing my job. But it was a job I had to do, and I loved my job. When I retired, it was at the rank of senior sergeant. This allowed me to be a leader for the men and women that I supervised. I knew how to allocate our limited resources to effectively be able to protect all our citizens in Newcastle County. I am committed to the safety and well-being of all of our citizens throughout all of Newcastle County. I am equally committed to strengthening the county's financial position. I will work full-time as your council president. This is not a stepping stone for me. I have the experience, the temperament, and the knowledge of county government to be an effective council president. I will listen to the concerns of all of our citizens, and I will strive to develop fair, educated, and balanced decisions. I am asking for your support and vote in the September 11th primary. Please feel free to check my website, reneetaschner.com. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
I'd like to thank the Civic League and for all the audience for coming tonight. As you know, like I said before, I will bring honesty, trust, transparency, and the highest ethics to this office. I've proven it to you in the past. I will continue to do it in my daily life now, and I will do it in the future, regardless of where I am, because that is what I'm made of, and that's what the community demands. I have a vision. I have a vision for this county to be much more customer friendly, to communicate with the communities. And the communities include everyone I said before. The developers are part of the community, the special interests, the citizens. We're all together in this. We will form partnerships and work together so that all viewpoints will be placed on the table and analyzed together so that when we make decisions, there is no fighting between community and other communities or with the county or with the developers. The Stoltz project where we have communities suing others is just unacceptable. We need to work together, and under my administration, we will work together. I've proven it in the past. I will do it in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for the opportunity this evening. I used to get real nervous, this being my first time running for anything, but now I'm very anxious in a good way to come down and talk to you folks. It's an opportunity to express where I think this county should be versus where it is. I've said this in a couple forums, and it's getting more and more real every day. We're about 3 weeks out from 30 to 40,000 people deciding the future for over 500,000 people for the next 4 years. You think of a small group here that we have gathered tonight, relatively small, and you have 6 people before you. 2 of them are going to hold some serious jobs, not excluding our candidate in the back. Pretty much every place that we go to speak, you'll see a flag. This being a police station, we have one back on the wall. And I look at that first star on the flag, and I think that we're the first county in the first state in the greatest country on earth. And that's a pretty significant thing, and I think we just deserve the best. I didn't know what you called that, what I just said, and then a friend of mine said that's patriotism. It's a pretty serious thing. And on a day like 9/11, where you gotta be patriotic, if you're American, you gotta be patriotic. We're over the pain, we'll never forget. We'll always remember. But be patriotic, go out and do the right thing. What's right for this county, what's right for you, what's right for your family, your children, your grandchildren. And don't give up hope. There's always hope. Hope is out there, and hope for a better county. We will get there, believe me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I also would like to thank everybody for being here tonight. This was a great debate. Stayed positive, and I hope it ends positive. But,
Police station.
We're in a police
I don't think the reverend's gonna think bad last.
everybody's gonna highlight their high points. I think we have a lot of issues we talked about, about involving land use. I think I've been there before. You saw the process that we utilized. I intend on using the same blueprint. We have serious problems facing financially. I think I was successful on that. I had some good times, yes, but I created the revenue by working with the General Assembly and by streamlining our government. And thirdly, when I was chief of police, when I was county executive, I had the finest police department in the country. I think I'd like to get back and work with them to get more involved in deployment, how to make this county safe, help out the city of Wilmington with their problems. Thank you all for entertaining us all tonight, and I would like to have you consider voting for me, Tom Gordon, on September 11th. Thank you very much.
Well, almost 2 years ago, when I unexpectedly got this office, because I don't think anybody thought Mike Castle wasn't going to win, we went in running, and we put 3 main objectives on the table. Get our fiscal house in order, because if your house isn't in order, you can't do anything else. Second was to start working and increasing our public safety areas. And the third was jobs. I think we've been successful starting and moving in all 3. It's been a tough time. This is probably the worst economy since the Great Depression. And we've made it. And we've got this house of Newcastle County in order. And I think you saw that the bond rating agencies have said that. We balanced the budget without gimmicks, without raiding the savings account, so we have something in the future, with no layoffs, no service cuts, and no tax increase. We are on a solid foundation. I've made the tough decisions. They're not always popular. We made them because we had to. So we're moving forward. I think we're in the right way. We have a good sewer system now that's environmentally sound. We're putting people to work in Newcastle County because our bond rating gives us a good rate, and we can do some things that maybe somebody else could not do. We have done things to set us up for the future, changing pensions, putting environmental controls on our buildings to make them less costly in the future. So I asked you to think about it. Do you want to go back? It's not 1997 again, or do you want to go forward? And I think I offer the fact of going forward. And I think most of you know me. Some of you don't like everything I say, but I'm straight with you. And many people thought I had a perceived conflict. My wife gave up her job. We were both dedicated to public service, and I think there's a lot of things that are real, and there's a lot of things that are perceived.
Stop.
I look forward to working for you another couple of years.
Thank you, Chairman Bullock.
Thank you, Chuck, and the league, and all of you who came out tonight to hear a conversation about the future of our county. I have worked with every county exec from Greenhouse to Gordon, Coons, and Clark in my capacity as a minister, pastor, and a community servant. Every individual that's running for mayor, city of Wilmington, I've worked closely with them. That is to say that I have the unique opportunity to have worked with those who've served in the past, those who are seeking to serve in the future for the betterment of Newcastle County. I believe that there are two critical issues we must address immediately, and there ought not be competing visions around crime and jobs. We need to be tough on crime, but also smart on crime. We need to work together with Washington and Dover to bring more jobs to the county. I'm uniquely qualified to do this job. This job, at the end of the day, is about leadership. I have a 30-year record of leadership. I'm educated. I'm uniquely qualified to do this job as a bridge builder. This is critical when you have a council that is often have competing visions. The president must bring everybody together to serve and to do the business of the people. Vote for me September 11th. Chris Bullock, 2012.com is my website. ChrisBullock2012.com. If you didn't hear me the other times, ChrisBullock2012.com. Our goal is to move the county from good to great. God bless you. Have a good evening.
Okay, I'm gonna thank everybody for showing up. In regards to your website, you can link it to ours and all viewers. And
Thank you, Chuck.
you get a lot of views. Now, as these people are leaving, who besides Sheriff Navarro and Councilman Potter do we have in the room?
Chuck, Spinnerelli's here. Keith Spinnerelli.
Yeah, I mean, the current elected officials, and we're gonna get to you, Mr. Spinnerelli. Anybody else? I just want to recognize the current elected officials. Okay, thank you all for coming. Now, before you all leave, we got one more person to speak.